Hello, welcome to our training for becoming an essay reader. I just wanted to say thank you so much for agreeing to become an essay reader here at Momentum Education. We're so happy to have you on our team. So I'm Madeline Cluck, and I'm the Enrichment Coordinator here at Momentum, and today I'm going to take you through the process and expectations of becoming an essay reader. But first, I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on Momentum Education. So Momentum is a nonprofit that helps low-income students in Houston area high schools get to and through post-secondary education. And this can mean vocational school, trade school, or a 2 or 4 year university degree, whatever it takes to help these students achieve their dreams. So after watching this training, please follow the instructions in the email you were sent to fill out a background check for the Houston area high schools. And once you received an email that you've passed the background check, please email me back confirming that you have passed the background check, as well as giving me a signed non-disclosure agreement. Once we have these both on file, we'll be able to start assigning you essays to read for our students. So without getting started, I will get started on the presentation. So first we're going to discuss some of the expectations and logistics of being an essay writer for Momentum. So our first expectation is that you provide feedback on students' essays within 5 days of receiving them, just because these essays all have really strict deadlines, and we want to give students as much time as possible to actually respond to your feedback and make changes before they need to turn the essays in. And then as far as logistics go, when you are assigned an essay, we will send you an email as well as a confirmation text on the same day so that you know that you've been assigned an essay. And so when we send you that text, I just ask that you reply confirming that you received the essay and we'll be able to complete it in a given time frame. And then additionally, I will go ahead and send you a reminder text after 3 days to confirm that you will still be able to finish the essay on time. And once you finish an essay, I ask that you please text me so that we can go ahead and send it to the students immediately, again, so that they have time to reply to your changes and possibly send it back in if they need to make a few more edits before submitting the essay. And lastly, I just ask that you please communicate with us if you can't finish an essay or can no longer serve as a reader. We know that things can get really busy and we're always here to help you. But we just want to make sure that all of our essays are being given back to students on time. So if you're not able to finish an essay on time, let us know as soon as possible so that we can assign it to another reader. So next I'm going to talk about some essays that might require rewrites. Before I go into this, I will say that please use this sparingly. However, ultimately this program is to help the student, so if an essay needs a complete rewrite, please let me know as soon as possible so I can get into contact with the student and we can work directly with them to either rewrite the essay or make very substantial changes. If feedback alone will not make an essay appropriate for a program, it might hurt the student more than it will help them. And so if a rewrite is truly necessary, please let me know. And here are a couple examples of essays that may need rewrites. So first is if the essay's content includes inappropriate, illicit, or illegal activities, it will need to be rewritten just so that the student is painted in the most positive light towards the program they're applying to. Another reason might be if the essay is just a list of accomplishments or hardships without having any actual story or content behind it. That would also be an indication that it is in need of a rewrite. Also, if the essay is composed entirely of conceptual ideas or made of idioms, this would also be an indication that the essay needs a rewrite because there would be no personal touch for the program to get to know the student and their individual personality. And a last reason that an essay might need a rewrite is if it doesn't have enough content to edit or encourage. So this could mean that the essay is too short to fit the word count, or if there's just not enough actual substance to the essay for you to work with, you might ask for the student to rewrite the essay. So here at Momentum, our 2 core values are integrity and students first. And keeping this in mind, I need to stress how important it is for us to not completely rewrite students' essays, but to only make suggestions and comments. It would be academically dishonest for us to allow students to turn in our writing with their names on it, and so we really need to make sure that in our feedback we're only making suggestions and comments about how students can make the paper better themselves. Also, it would not be helpful to the students for us to rewrite these papers because it can actually help them grow a lot as people and students to write them themselves. And so, in the name of Students First, we really need to make sure we're not rewriting the papers. Yeah. So in order to prevent ourselves from just rewriting papers for the students, we ask that you only provide feedback in two forms, through suggestion mode on Google Docs and then also through comments. And so for suggestion mode, we ask that you only use this for grammar mistakes or punctuation mistakes. So if a student forgets an apostrophe or a period or has incorrect capitalization, you can go ahead and use suggestion mode and change it for them, and they'll be able to see what change you made and decide if they want to keep it or not. And so you can access suggestion mode on Google Docs by clicking on the editing button in the top right corner, and then pulling down the drop-down menu, and you should be able to select suggesting. And then as far as comments, we ask that you use comments for anything else. So if you want to change the sentence placement or some ideas, we ask that you just highlight the sentence you want to talk about and then click that little comment button and make a comment suggesting what you think the students should change. So this can be ideas or structural changes or really anything, but this should be probably the bulk of your feedback. And also, just a side note, whenever you comment, make sure that you click comment after you're done so that it saves it onto the Google Doc and the student will be able to see it. And so here are some other guidelines that we want you to keep in mind while you're reading and providing feedback on these essays. So first of all, we ask that you don't be too harsh on the students. Constructive criticism can be really helpful for students to receive. So at the end of providing feedback, we just ask that you go back and add 2 or 3 positive comments so that the students can see where they're doing well and can do more of it throughout their essay. And then second of all, there are a few things that you should be cognizant of while reading essays to make sure that essays fit all the guidelines for whatever the student's applying for. So first of all, the essay's prompt. We ask that the students provide the prompt at the beginning of all their essays. So we ask that you just read through the prompt and make sure that the essay directly answers the prompt, because it can be pretty easy to stray away from the topic of the essay as you're writing, and we want to make sure the student's answering the question that the program is looking for. And then second of all, word count limit. If a student is either way too far below or way too high above the word count limit, we ask that you make a note of that so that they know whether they need to add more content or take more away. And then also make note if you think any changes that they need to make will put them over or below the word count limit, just so that they are prepared to either take away or add information of their essay. And then lastly, please make note of whether the essay is for a college application or for a scholarship. So if it's for a scholarship and the student displays evidence of financial privilege, they would not be the best applicant for that scholarship. So please make note of that if they're applying for a scholarship so that they know that they might need to make some content changes to make them a better applicant for the program. And then also we ask that you please be prepared for sensitive material. All of these application essays are meant to be personal, and so it's really common for them to touch on sensitive issues. And so first of all, we ask that you keep an open mind when reading these, and then also if you encounter an essay that deals with an especially concerning issue, please reach out to our executive director, Raj. His email is on the screen in front of you, just so that he can get in contact with the students and that we can make sure that they're all getting any help that they might need. And lastly, we ask that you ask questions in the essays. These can be a really good form of feedback and can really help students figure out where they need to clarify what they're talking about a little bit more. So if you don't understand what's happening in the essay, or you're not really sure what the student's trying to say, just ask a question, and that can be a really good form of feedback in itself. So what does a good essay look like? So one thing that makes a good essay is precise language. So most of these essays have pretty low word count limits, so students should really be intentional when choosing words that they want to include in their essays. One, to make sure that they fit their limit, and then also to avoid being overly formal in their writing. So for example, a student might use the word irritated over furious if it better fits their meaning, but there's no need to use words like splenectic because they sound overly formal and not in the tone that essay readers expect in college application scholarship essays. Also, students should avoid language that's either too casual or too formal. They should really aim for something in the middle, more of a conversational tone, just because essay readers really want to get to know them as a person, and a conversational tone usually lends itself to making the student appear more personable and individual, like as themselves. And then also students should try to avoid using idioms or common phrases just because essay readers read so many essays and they encounter phrases like that all the time. And so using idioms can prevent a student from standing out in the application process. And so if you encounter any common phrases or idioms in your essays, we ask that you suggest that the students use perhaps figurative language or something that can make them stand out a little bit more and still communicate what they're trying to say. Another thing to note is that application essays do not follow the typical 5-paragraph structure. There's plenty of room for creativity in these essays, and if you notice a student isn't a very strong writer, we ask that you encourage them to use creative structures. So for example, if a student is interested in baking, they might want to structure their essay as a recipe, or if they're interested in drama, they might want to structure their essay as a play. And these can really help them stand out in the application process. But before suggesting it, please make note of whether you think the student would be able to handle that change and still submit a very strong essay to whatever program they're applying to. And lastly, we wanted to note that anecdotes are more effective than stories in college application essays just because they give more room for students to talk about how experiences changed them and help them grow as a person. So basically, anecdotes are brief accounts that set the scene at the peak of the drama, and they tell where the event is happening, what is happening, but they don't go into detail about the surroundings as you would expect in a story. And so with the 1/3, 2/3 rule, students would write 1/3 of their essay giving the anecdote and actually talking about what's happening, and then the rest of the 2/3 of the essay would be focused on how that changed them as a person and help them grow from the experience. And so this is a really effective way to get the student to talk about themselves in the essay rather than paying too much attention on the events around them or other people. So one more thing to look out for when reading essays is the stereotypical essay. So there's a few topics that essay readers encounter a lot when reading college applications and scholarship essays. And so a student writing about one of those topics can really have a hard time standing out because they're lumped in with a bunch of other people writing about the same thing. So, for example, breakups, volunteering, winning a game, general interests are all written about a lot. And so, if you encounter an essay written about one of those topics, we ask that you encourage the student to either find a way to make it more specific to them or find another topic to write about that might show a little bit more about them individually and not just give a surface level view of their life. And then next, please encourage specificity and reflection. These essays should really focus on how the students themselves have changed from any experience they've had, and so being really specific with what they do now as opposed to before an event can really help a student make a strong essay. Another thing to be aware of are privilege complexes in essays. So if you read an essay and you kind of get the idea that the student has either a savior complex or a privilege complex, please make note of that, and in your feedback, maybe suggest that the student write about it in a different way or write about a different topic that is more suited towards them so that they can appear best to the essay readers. And then lastly, a lot of essays are focused on the students writing about any heroes they have or mentors. But even in these essays, students should really be talking about themselves mostly. It should only be partly about their mentor, and then the rest of it should be a reflection on how that mentor has changed them and how they are different from knowing that person. Another thing to make note of is when you're reading why us questions, really make sure that the students are mentioning specific programs, specific professors, specific events that they're interested in with the university or the program, so that they really show that they're interested enough to do research into the program, and that they really want to go to that place specifically and are not just given a broad overview of why they're interested. And they should really be specific enough so that they can't be replicated at other colleges or at other programs, because the programs really want to know that the student is interested in them specifically and not just anybody else like them. All right, so that just about wraps up our training. To finish off, I wanted to leave you with a few more things to keep in mind as you begin your journey as an essay reader here at Momentum. So first of all, I just wanted to note that all of my contact information is in the email you received. So you have access to my phone number and my email. Please feel free to reach out to me on either of those contact informations, and I will get back to you as soon as I can to answer any questions, comments, or concerns, or feedback about the program. And then second, there is also a essay guidebook linked in the email. Please use that as reference as you read through students' essays, and to just go back on anything we covered in this training. It will all be in that guidebook, and you can look back on that to remind yourself of the most appropriate ways to give feedback, and then also just some logistical issues that you can remind yourself about. And then lastly, there are a few action items for you after this training is over. So first of all, you'll notice that there's a set of instructions in the email for how to complete a background check for HISD. Please follow those instructions to complete the background check, and once you have finished the background check and you've received a confirmation email, please email us back with 3 things. One of those things being a confirmation that you've completed the background check, the second being that you the signed non-disclosure agreement, which is also linked in the email that you were sent. And then third, let us know if you'd be willing to follow up with students directly after they have received feedback about their essay. And so this would mean that I would CC you in any of my emails to the students so that they would have your contact information. And this is completely optional. You can either opt in or out of following up with students, but just let us know in that email to us whether you would be willing to talk directly to students to give quicker feedback on their essays. And so yeah, just to reiterate, include 3 things in our email. 1, the confirmation that you've completed the background check. 2, the signed non-disclosure agreement. And 3, let us know if you're willing to follow up directly with students. So lastly, I just wanted to reiterate that we really are appreciative of all of our essay readers and volunteers. This program really wouldn't be able to function without you, and the students benefit so much from having people read over their essays. So thank you again. We look forward to working with you. Goodbye.